Baby, it's cold out there. Woo! We're getting ready for 2024 in the midst of this cold weather. Welcome. Welcome, folks. We're going to talk about the big moments, interesting stories of 2023. We each chose one based upon our personalities, life experience, etc. And I'll begin things. And for me, it's very easy. This year for me was all about the low country of South Carolina.
Yes.
And the Murdaugh saga. It's no longer just a trial, it's a saga. There are certain cases that will live for years and everyone knows, and this is one of them. And for me, being down in the low country, it was interesting. You know, at Court TV, where I have my show every night at 8 o'clock, 8 to 10 live, you see trials from all around the country. And I love the regionalization of the law. I love the way they do things in Massachusetts. I love the defense attorneys with the pinky rings in New Jersey. I love all that, but my favorite are the Southern trials. I just love the way they embrace the world of justice. And it's to me, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. The accents but the absolute passion that they have for the law. I feel like lawyers in other parts of the country are lawyers and they're prosecutors, but I feel like when you are in that world in the South, that is your whole world. That is your whole being. And I think it oozes out in the trials and the cases. And I think that's what made this one even bigger than other stories for us in 2023. And it was a lawyer who was the defendant. So that became so much a part of everything. And I really got to live it and uncover it down there in the Low Country.
Well, not only was it a lawyer, it was one of their own, right? A lawyer who frequented that jurisdiction.
Oh, no, there's a rich family tradition going back to the Civil War.
Wow.
In that region, and that were the epitomes of the legal process. That was, the South Carolina.
I'll give you the family history. This is the amazing, and I uncovered all this stuff by being there and just talking to people. I learned it all. Not really uncovered, but learned it all. The Murdaugh family, they had their holds in the criminal system and the civil system, which are completely different, right? Criminal, you prosecute people to put them in prison. Civil, you sue people for money. They go back generations being the local solicitors, right? Who are the head prosecutors. But down there, it's not a full-time job. Like, you can be like the solicitor, the prosecutor, and have your little side hustle in the civil world where you make all your money. And that's what
There's not a conflict?
No conflict, not down there. No. And how they got started in the civil world was one of the Murdaughs, and I went to the house. Their house was just set back from some train tracks. And there was a guy who gets literally hit by a train in like their front yard. And that becomes the first client. And from there, they learn how to sue the railroads and they become experts. And they're not just getting cases like locally, they're getting cases from around the country because they are experts in suing railroads and getting jurisdiction. And they would be able to get all these cases and somehow make the argument and get jurisdiction, meaning they're suing whoever they're suing, these companies, on their own turf. They always were able to do that. And they owned it. They every juror who was sitting there had some connection, and they just owned it. And they built this incredible civil practice that way, making money, but then also controlled who got prosecuted and who didn't get prosecuted. So they owned the entire justice system.
How many generations did it go back?
Alex's great-grandfather. Great or great-great? I think it was great-grandfather, because it would be the great-great-grandfather of the next generation, which was getting ready to take over, which having a little trouble passing the bar.
Well, I watched quite a bit of the trial on Court TV. Obviously not as much of either or of you gentlemen, and it just struck me in that environment. There's got to be people who want to take you down, no matter what. I mean, yes, he's guilty, but want to take you down even if you're not.
No, they were scared of so much power with the tentacles that there was this aura about him that people would talk about. Oh, he's a Murdoch, or he's connected to the Murdochs, and then people would be like, well, we're not going to go after him. No way. Like, you can't, they were untouchable. And the whole thing started when his son, Paul, the one he murdered, was drunk, took the family boat out, and crashed it in the middle of the night. He was drunk and killed a young woman, Mallory Beach. And that lawsuit is what really starts to put pressure on Alec Murdoch, his family, his finances, and his world starts to crumble a little bit. And he had been cheating clients for years, but the civil suit was going to uncover all of that, because you have to, someone's going to be going through your books. And his books were not clean. And this was going to just blow up on him. So from his perspective, the distraction, and this is what the prosecutors argued, the distraction was this horrific murder. So I don't know how he gets to the point of murdering his own family, but it was a distraction because it took the heat off him for a while, but then the heat turned back up, and then, much, much hotter than he ever could have imagined, because they got him for the murders.
I don't understand why he's been settling all of his cases, and yet still trying to overturn his murder conviction. I mean, either way, the guy's in jail forever, right?
Well, I mean, he's got judgments against him. That's not going to keep him in jail. We don't have debtor's prison in the United States anymore.
But what about the, doesn't he have crime?
Yeah, he's got some fraud charges as well.
Well, he got the fraud charges, that's right. But settling cases, from a civil standpoint, I mean, that actually makes sense, because it makes it look, I mean, there are insurance policies, and I'm sure the law firms got insurance policies that will cover some of those judgments.
Let me tell you what happened. The stand-up people, and again, this gets back to what I started with, like the lawyers, it's like, my reputation is everything. And he destroyed the reputation of that firm that, his ancestors had built, right? And the lawyers there they've been paying off the clients from their own funds. So every lawyer at that firm, who at one point best friends with Alec Murdoch, they were so close, like family friends, he destroyed them all financially. They all took a big step backwards, but they've been making good on the money. And that goes back to the original thing of why I love lawyering in the South. There's a sense of pride that
Vinnie, it may also be,
I'm wearing suspenders right now too, because I'm a lawyer.
I mean, it may not be as magnanimous as you think, okay? Because there's a duty of oversight that an attorney has with regards to trust accounts and with regards to things along those lines. And you can't delegate that to somebody else and say, oh, it wasn't my responsibility. It was his, and he took advantage of us. You're supposed to know what's going on with your accounts. You're supposed to know where things are, and if there's a discrepancy, you all pay for it. It's not just the one guy. So they're paying them back because they may be up on ethics charges if they don't pay them back.
Yeah, but they also have pride.
No, but I mean, because I've seen it happen in New Jersey with regards to, like, I knew an attorney who had a trusted employee who was in charge of the closing account for real estate.
Was in charge of the escrow account.
Well, closing account's a little bit different than an escrow account, but a closing account.
Escrow and beans. My mother loved the escrow and beans.
And then with the escrow,
snails.
and he started
Hey, no, that's escargot. What are you doing?
I know, but I couldn't help but think of the jerk when he ordered the escargot and had them take it back because he said there were snails on his plate.
I want this moment to last forever.
What is that?
Isn't that from The Jerk?
That's from The Jerk.
His wife,
Yes.
in a different movie. He carries his wife.
That was from The Jerk.
Home, and he's like, wish this moment could last forever. And then he stands there. He's like trying to hold her, and they kind of fast forward time a little bit.
It's one of the funniest movies ever made. And there's the scene where the girl has his name tattooed on her behind, and he says, "Wow, I bet more people will see my name on your ass than in the white pages," because he was also very excited when he got in the white pages.
That's right. It was in the phone book. I'm somebody now.
I'm somebody. Wow.
And that man must hate those cans.
Yes, I was just thinking of that one. I was born a poor black child.
But the escargot joke was also in Trading Places when they're at dinner and Eddie Murphy is now being touted as this big executive in the company, and this really rich guy says that a snail walked into the store at an automobile store and bought a Ferrari and required them to put a huge S on it. And they said, "Why do you want to do that?" He goes, "Because I want everyone to see me go, hey, look at that escargot."
All right, so that's my big one. Show us your big one, Al.
Oh my!
Well, tell us your big one.
On camera, Vin, unless you're going to pixel.
Your big story for 2023.
Oh, it's big story. I'm sorry. I am going to go with something a little bit different. The parole of Leslie Van Houten.
Oh,
one of the Manson, followers. Only one of two Manson followers who have been paroled for either the Sharon Tate or the LaBianca murders. Okay. Also included in that would be Gary Hinman and Shorty Shea, but all of those were all in there. And she was in July of 2023 paroled.
That's outrageous. Outrageous.
Well, you know what's interesting, Vinnie, is that she's paroled and she is a millionaire.
Really?
why?
She has an estate that they valued at $15 million.
Is that family money or?
I'm sorry? It's family money. Okay. Also money that she received because she wasn't subject to the Son of Sam laws,
Right.
like that we see now in New York and stuff like that. So she's made money off of books. She's made money off of documentaries, and she's made money off of other things that she was done while she was in prison.
That's enough reason to keep her locked up.
$15 million estate. But what was interesting about her is that, first of all, she's convicted. When she's convicted and sentenced to death, she is the youngest person in the history of California to be condemned to death. Okay, youngest woman. Okay, to be
skinniest too, right? She was skinny.
She was pretty skinny. She was also probably the most
Makes sense,
attractive of the three that were involved. But because she was like a former beauty queen too. But she ends up getting her conviction overturned in 1976. So she's convicted, and then it's overturned in 76. There's a second trial. And in the second trial, the jury deadlocks.
Whoa.
So, yep, the jury deadlocked on the question of diminished capacity. Now, the reason why she gets a retrial, okay, was because during the trial, her attorney, Ronald Hughes, disappeared. He went on a camping trip. Okay, he decided to go on a camping trip, which everybody does, because I know, Vin, when you're in the middle of a trial like I am, like, there's nothing better that you want to do than go camping, okay, in the middle of this.
I'm scared of the snipes.
Yeah, well, that he had to be scared of something because he never came back from this camping trip. They found his body. They found the car in a ravine, and then they eventually found the body months and months later. He was killed. No, he was murdered.
He was murdered.
Well, it was so badly decomposed they couldn't tell, but they're assuming he was murdered on the direction of Manson, because what happened was Hughes was trying to use the diminished capacity defense for Houghton, and Houghton didn't want that, and neither did any of the other co-defendants want that. They wanted to keep Charlie from being blamed for any of this, and so they wanted to take responsibility. She wanted to testify. He was not going to let her testify, and so that was what's going on. He disappears. He eventually gets killed, and the body is found later on by Clem Rogan, who was one of the other members of the family, ends up giving a tip to the police, and they find his body near Spawn Ranch where they had been. So
they continued the trial after the murder?
Yeah, and that's why that was just it. They asked for a mistrial on her part, and the judge denied it and forced it to trial and brought in a new attorney, just fresh out, to get involved with it, where he had already been in the middle.
You can't do
it. Was a foolish thing. It was a foolish thing for the judge to do.
Even I know enough not to do that. I mean,
and so she ends up getting a appellate division gives her a new trial. New trial comes. The jury gets stuck on the question of whether or not it was manslaughter or murder. And conceivably, if she had been convicted of manslaughter, she could have actually been released right after that, because she'd already been in prison for all that time.
But doesn't manslaughter sound more serious than murder?
It does sound murder. It does sound.
Ladies, this wasn't just a murder, ladies and gentlemen. This was manslaughter.
Objection. But so they get deadlocked on that. The prosecutor's office is now panicking, okay, because this diminished capacity thing ends up working. She was telling them that she was being fed 18 tabs of acid a day, okay, and that she was getting nervous to do all this stuff, and that she wasn't in the right mind. Third trial, she gets convicted of 2 counts of murder, okay, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, and then she's sentenced to 7 years to life.
And was the death penalty off the table at that point? Because
the death penalty was overturned. It was overturned in 72.
72.
Right. Okay. So this is now this is almost 1980. Okay. So she ends up being convicted.
So 1980, do you think they still were wearing the really wide ties?
No, it was the skinny ties.
Skinny ties by 1980?
1980 was the skinny tie time.
No, that's the mid-80s.
No, I think 78, 79, some of the new wave punk groups.
The new wave punk guys.
They're not going to make their way into the courtroom. I think 1980 still had fat tiles. I think they were extra fat, like my fat laces that I had on my sneakers.
Well, all I can say
fat laces, Jonesy. Did you ever have fat laces on your shoes?
No, that really wasn't my scene. In fact, if you showed up at the nightclub I hung out at, they probably wouldn't have let you in with fat laces.
I love the fat laces. Do
a little popping and locking for me.
Yeah, back in the day, I was a little bit. Yeah, can't do it right now. A little bursitis.
Vinnie, Jonesy's club is restricted. Don't tell him you're Jewish. Okay.
Hey, it was Aldo's. It was Aldo's. He played there.
I DJ'd at the Turtle Brook Inn in West Orange, and they had the anti-Guido rules, and it was no leather jackets were permitted.
Yeah, so Fonzie couldn't come in.
Clubs would do that. In my case, in the club I went to, it would be to keep a certain vibe. You wanted it to be a new wave club. It wasn't really to keep out any ethnic group or anything like that. But
this was they did not want the Guidos in there at all. they just but I was DJing and all right, I'll go undercover.
Well,
that's where you drop the O from your name.
Exactly.
Before I have to pass the baton, there were still 4 of the assailants that were involved in the Tate murders and the LaBianca murders and Gary Hidman and Shorty Shea that are still in prison from the Manson family, and that's Patricia Krenwinkel, Tex Watson, Bruce Davis, and Bobby Beausoleil. And they have all been up for parole numerous times, denied almost exclusively. Van Houten, and in the case of Bruce Davis, who murdered Shorty Shea and was involved in the murder of Hinman, he's become a preacher, actually. He's a reverend now in the prison. And he's been denied parole probably 15 times. And the rest of them, as many as 10 times. So there are still 4 in there. Leslie Van Houten is out. And that was my story for 2023. Because I never thought in a million years any of these people would ever get out.
No.
Okay. I mean, it just seems to me that there is such a preoccupation with that issue that no one was going to release them. And especially, I mean, Van Houten stabbed the LaBianca woman, I think like 24 times with a knife, and severed her spine. That's how hard she was stabbing.
It was brutal. It was brutal. Yeah.
Well, John Hank.
The passage of time makes everyone go soft. It just goes soft.
But John Hinckley shot the president, and he got on a work furlough. He was going home to mom on weekends, and now he's like a free man. And that blows my mind. You tried to shoot the president of the United States. You shot him.
He did shoot him.
Yeah.
Well, Squeaky Fromm also attempted to kill the president, and she got out.
And she had Manson connections, right?
Yeah, she did. She was part of the family.
It was Squeaky. I thought it was Lenny.
That's Squiggy.
Squiggy.
Oh, good news. It was Lenny of the Spinal Tap too.
Okay, it was Leslie and Squeaky.
Squeaky.
Speaking of Lenny and Squeaky, they're making a Spinal Tap 2, which I'm very excited about.
I'm not. That's not going to go anywhere. I mean, that you know what? It comes a point in time when you just let the laurels lay. Okay.
Well, there is precedent set now for bands that have been together that long, 80-year-old Stones on the road, so it has potential.
But you know what? They made History of the World Part 2, and it was horrible. Okay, some movies just
said the second half of the History of the World has been bad. Well, some might agree with you.
No, it was horrendous.
I thought the original was called The History of the World Part 2, just as a gag.
No, Part 1, History of the World.
Oh, okay. So I'm up. This isn't the most salacious case of the year or anything like that, but to preface it, I'm a fan of show business, of music. And as a child, when I found out that Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis hated each other, it broke my heart. When I saw Buddy Hackett and Harvey Korman play Abbott and Costello in a made-for-TV movie where they hated each other, again, it broke my heart. Lucy and Ricky, divorced. So
that kind of thing. When Lucy and Ricky divorced, that got me.
I just like to think, in my mind, I'd like to think that they loved each other because they were so good.
And Mira
slept with so many women. Ricky,
Stiller, and Mira,
they stayed together.
They were still together up until the time of Jerry's death. Okay,
Well, I'm not a Captain and Tennille fan, but they divorced after 50 years, and then I had heard the reason was for financial purposes because of medical bills and such.
Medical bills, right?
Yeah. But nonetheless, in November, Hall & Oates, it was revealed that Daryl Hall filed a lawsuit and restraining order against John Oates. And at first, there wasn't a lot of information, and it just sounded really terrible. This is the best-selling duo of all time.
Are they? They're number one?
Yeah.
They are. They've Simon and Garfunkel.
More than the Everly Brothers?
Yes. Well, think about it. How many hits they had versus the Everly Brothers.
Everly Brothers had a ton of hits.
Hall & Oates were indeed, at least like 10 years ago, unless they've been surpassed, the biggest selling duo of all time.
More than Peaches and Herb. Rufus and Shaka Khan.
And that's not a two. Rufus and Shaka Khan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, before Chaka Khan, there was Chaka Khan.
Yeah, 127 beats per minute.
Yes, BPM. That's a great line in the Wham song about his BPMs going up in the huge hit they had. Never mind, I digress, which is my specialty. But Hall & Oates.
Now, wait a minute. If Wham had stayed together, maybe they would outsell Hall & Oates.
Wait a minute. What about Ashford and Simpson?
Yeah. Before you go.
What about Ashford and Simpson?
When I researched it, and it now was many years ago, maybe close to 10 years ago, they were the biggest selling duo of all time.
Okay.
Can I say something about Abbott and Costello? Okay,
Yes.
and Jerry Lewis and Martin and Lewis and Abbott and Costello. Okay. Who? What are you, owl all of a sudden?
Who was the tall one?
It was what?
The tall one, and who was the
Jerry Lewis?
And who was the roundabout one?
Well, the thing is this: the old vaudeville pay schedule was that the straight man got paid more money than the comedic, than the foil. Okay, so Abbott made more money than Costello. Okay, Martin made more money than Lewis. So there's always going to be a resentment on that kind of a situation because that was the old vaudeville pay scale, and it would always go that way.
The straight man is often the genius behind the act, but in Abbott and Costello's case, I don't think that was
Sonny and Cher.
The case.
Sonny and Cher.
That's
Sonny
right.
was the genius.
Sonny was a genius. Sonny was very, very smart.
He studied recording production under Phil Spector.
Yeah, and he should have studied skiing under Jean-Claude Keeling.
Funny thing about those real rich guys, they always ski in the trees. And my theory on that is that, the poor guy can't afford to go down that slope. Because you have your Kennedy as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. But, so like, and it's very difficult. I mean, you guys ever been in a band? It's very difficult in a band to stay together. It is a marriage, and it has always got the same ups and downs. There's egos that have to be done. Everybody's got the way they want to do it. They don't like what this one's doing. There's, the ganging up on the one guy because he doesn't want to do it this way. Well, it's 3 against 1. I mean, it happened, in my experience, and I can see how it would happen even with Hall & Oates. And Hall & Oates' thing is business. Once again, that's what always comes in the way. Business and money are always the things that are going to drive the band apart. It's got nothing to do with their ability to sit there and put a song together. Okay,
they could probably a girl could do it. A girl,
yes.
Well, we've had girls come into bands. I mean, Joey Ramone's, girlfriend was stolen by Johnny Ramone. All right, and he had
Johnny brother, his own brother.
Yes, that's right. And Johnny Ramone stole his girlfriend, and Joey Ramone wrote a song called "The KKK Took My Baby Away," which was dedicated to the right-wing Johnny Ramone, who was...
Oh, I didn't know what that was about. I just thought it was just a very clever, funny song.
No, it was about the fact that he's a right-wing conservative individual, a Reagan supporter, and so he ended up calling him a KKK member. Because the KKK took my baby away.
Now, I know what you're saying now, and I often call it second banana syndrome. The lead vocalist gets the first choice of the girls, the pretty lead guy, and the guitarist is like the second guy in the band. Often I think that's the problem with bands. One guy's just getting too much attention and the egos are involved. Hall & Oates being a duo, a little bit different. They had, Daryl Hall gets top billing, but John Oates' name is right up there. And it just sad to me. They made such great music together. Apparently, the restraining order had to do with their business partners. And show business history is filled with show business partners suing each other, but still getting along. Like the Beatles suing each other, like their lawyers suing each other for whatever reason, yet they're getting along at that time. It's business.
Not really. I mean, there was a period of time. Ben, I was just talking about this. I mean, Paul McCartney was thoroughly pissed off that they were changing business managers because he wanted to keep, what turned out to be his wife's father, as the person
Right.
that was going to be doing the building, being the business manager, and they wanted to go another route. And,
there were
and so
periods
they
when
weren't talking.
But there were periods when they were talking, when there's still like the occasional lawsuit would flare up because, there's it's business and there's like, lawyers representing each of them. And I think it's possible to sue one another and be in a band and still come out together, shake hands, and go out there and perform.
But how do you determine like the power of the relationship? How do you determine whose name comes first?
Well, that's because Daryl Hall's name was on the mailbox. Their name and their group came from their mailbox of the apartment they shared in Philadelphia. The mailbox just simply said Hall and Oates. And so when they started performing, they were Hall and Oates.
Well, and let's face it. I mean, come on. If you go and we have Oates and Hall, you think it's a cereal.
Right. Plus Daryl's like the pretty one, and he's the vocalist.
I don't know. Oates got the mustache, right? He had the mustache, right?
Yes.
So some ladies like the mustache.
And the curly hair.
I worked with John Oates at a recording studio. I mean, I was just a gopher, but he was a nice enough guy. He was nice to the help, and I was the help.
Coming up to Sirius for the Me and Vinnie show, I rode an elevator with Daryl Hall.
I was
down.
So I learned long ago to respect show business guys, celebrities, and to not fawn over them. But I was walking by a Sirius studio one day, and Daryl Hall was behind the glass, and like I was just stunned and jumped back like 6 feet because he had that kind of presence in my mind, like as a superstar. Anyway, the lawsuit is based on John Oates wanting to sell his share of their business entity, and the songs are already partially owned by a different party, but the group that John Oates wanted to sell his half of Whole Oates, their business partnership, owns a part of the songs already. Daryl Hall apparently doesn't like the way they conduct business, but get this, a part of what they were buying was their likeness and their name. So there would be this company that would own a part of Daryl Hall's name, or Hall and Oates' name.
So they could send anyone out to be Hall and Oates, right? Anyone could like me and you could perform as Hall and Oates.
In the future, who knows, perhaps.
Whoa, here she comes. Watch out, Paul, she'll cheer you up.
So it's saddened me, the story, and there's not a lot out about it now.
Well, what should happen is Hall should buy out Oates.
Hall claims he wants to keep control.
Hall should
maybe they're worth so much that he just, but maybe they're worth so much, and they are worth a lot, that Daryl doesn't have that kind of scratch.
He brought it from the bank. You take out a loan, Jerry.
He's 77.
You just write it off. Isn't that how they do it?
Vinny's got a guy. He'll take care of it.
We've run out of time. Let's do the countdown, and then we'll end the show to 20.
Okay.
All right, ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!